Hey everybody, sitting out here. This is an addition to my other 300-mile video, a 300-pound video, I should say. Um, Things that you should expect, and uh, wear items that are going to not last as long as they might if you weighed less, and things like that. Things to look out for in that might break. So I still this year haven't been as successful at losing weight as I have been in previous years. Something's different than it was last year. Probably I'm not eating the same, but I'm still and I'm not getting out on the bike as often as I'd like. The weather has been really hit and miss here in the last few days. Rained last night, rained most of the afternoon, so I didn't get out yesterday. And when I don't exercise, I have a heck of a time sleeping. It's in the 70s now. It was in the 50s clear up until past noon. So now it's starting to warm up. So first thing you'll notice if you weigh 300 pounds or more and riding a bike is the tires don't last as long, and that's the effect of weighing a little more. Is tires tend to not last as long. They'll get a flat spot on them. Where they wear uneven. So that's part of the disadvantages of weighing so much, is that you may have that problem. The next thing you're going to notice is the spokes. You're going to have to retension them more often. Part of this can be mitigated by unloading the seat when you go over a bump. Otherwise, lift your butt up a little bit, especially if you're going off square edge bumps like curbs and stuff. Your butt shouldn't be on the seat when you do that. You want to transfer the weight to the center of the bike. The center of the bike on this bike is non-typical. It's more biased towards the rear, so you're going to have more weight towards the rear. So unload your back tire a little bit and transfer some of the weight to the front. Lean forward, just simple stuff. That will help you make your wheels last a little longer. Next thing would be brakes. The brakes will tend to wear faster. They've got more stop and requires more energy to stop. So far we've talked about brakes, and tires, and spokes. The spokes on the front wheel shouldn't be a problem usually, just on the back wheel. So you're gonna have to check your spoke tension a little more often. The wheels were fairly true when they come on the bike. So as long as you go evenly all the way around with your spoke tension, you should stay pretty true. Seats, as you noticed, I went through 2 or 3 seats before I finally bought the bullet and spent $50 and bought a decent seat. The seat works well for me. Some people might think that it won't, but it works well. It takes your butt a little bit to get used to it, but any seat requires some level of adjustment before it's comfortable. Pedals, I noticed my pedals wore out fairly fast, but they were cheap, so we're not going to say. These pedals seem to be working out fine. And the next things, now let's talk about, those are wear items. The brakes on mine probably have 3/4 of the pad left, at least on the back, and almost new on the front. If you're one thing for you new bike riders, you always want to pull the back brake, which will be the right brake, before the left brake. Always brake right, your right rear brake first. You don't want to end up over the handlebars. It's a good advice to follow. Your back brake is one you're going to use most of, and then if you need to stop, you need more stopping power, then add your front brake. Things that could break that you're going to have problems with is if you're tall rider and heavy, you're going to want to look and see where your seat post is, how far in the tube it is. Because if it's too far out of the tube, even if you're at the max insertion line or the minimum insertion line, you're going to cause that seat tube a lot of stress. So if you're a real tall rider and your seat tube's at the minimum insertion line, it's time to start looking for a longer one. Now, the one that comes on the XP is 500 millimeters long, so 50 centimeters. The one that comes on the step through is much shorter. So if you find on the step through you don't have a long enough seat tube, start looking for a 500 millimeter one and start from there. On the XP, I don't think there's much longer out there, but you might get lucky and find some obscure brand that's making one that's longer than that. So another option is to find a spring seat that gets you up, is taller, the seat taller, so that you can insert the seat tube a little farther in and adjust accordingly. Because what will happen is at the seat tube, I wish I had a stick, but at the seat tube where the clamp is, it will start fracturing there. There's a slot cut in that seat tube that allows it to squeeze the seat post. And what will happen is it'll start moving there and it'll cause a crack that'll go down the frame. But it doesn't happen. No, I have in the almost 50 years, we'll say 50 years that I've been riding bikes, I've only had one frame break there. I've had some breakdown at the bottom bracket, but that was many years ago, and I didn't weigh no 300 pounds. I was a 150 pounder when I broke that bottom bracket, and I think that was just poor manufacturing. This bike is way overbuilt. The welds on it look great. I would say that they either have some skilled welders in China doing this, or they have a machine doing it. Likely it's a robot that's doing it, because them are really nice looking welds. The bike is strongly built. I would say that in most cases that 330 pounds is not going to be a problem for this bike, as long as you're reasonable in your riding style. Bearings, typically, I've never had problems with bearings even when I weighed 300 plus pounds riding a bike. Never had problems with the bearings wearing any faster than any other. And being that I worked as a bike mechanic for 7-8 years, at a straight bike mechanic before I even started building bikes, I've got a little experience. I've seen lots and lots of bikes, and I've seen lots of heavier people than me riding bikes. Matter of fact, I used to service a bike for a guy that weighed 450 pounds. He was 6'8", 6'9", and weighed about 450 pounds. And he rode a regular Trek bike. It was nothing special. The difference, he had special wheels built for it because he was always paranoid about breaking the wheels, and I always used to tell him the wheels that are on it are fine. But he had 36-hole wheels like this bike, this XP, and it has 36-hole wheels. The difference on a quality built bike is that they're almost double walled almost always. These are single walled rims. So it makes them a little less stout than a double wall aluminum rim. So, but they're 36 hole with 12 gauge spokes. They're They're pretty well built. If they were tensioned properly from the factory a little better, I think that you'd see less problems out of people. Have to me have to retension the spokes. But I have a tension gauge that I could use and show you guys how to use it, but I don't think you guys would spend the money to buy it. And besides, for most times, it's just as easy to do it by feel than it is by taking a gauge. It adds time to the whole truing process. I have an expensive one. I don't even remember. 25 years ago, it was a couple $100. So uh, it's in a case somewhere. I doubt I could even find it. I don't have a clue where it is right now. But for the most part, it's wheels are going to be a thing that you're going to deal with off and on in your using your cycle. Some people will just take it to a bike shop, and some people will do it themselves. It's nothing real hard about it. Just remember, you start and make sure all the spoke tension's even all the way across the wheel. Um, Braking. Handlebars, I've never seen a handlebar break other than in a crash. Forks, I have seen forks bend. If you hit something hard enough, you're going to bend it. Don't ever fix a fork. If it's bent, just get a new one. Don't mess with it. That's a safety thing, and you could end up killing yourself if you don't. Just replace the fork if you bend it. Headsets, never wore one out. I've replaced them, but I've never worn one out. Bottom brackets, you get about 5-10 years out of a cheap one. Good ones last forever. So probably get tired. You'll probably wear the motor out on this before you wear the bottom bracket out on it. So seat post, I've never broke a seat post other than in crash. Cables, they're depending on where you store your bike is how much problems you will have out of the shifter and the brake cables. Stored inside, away from a salty car, probably be fine for many years. Yeah, and I say away from a salty car, meaning that if you park your car in the garage after you've driven it on the road and the roads and they use salt in your area, that salt transfers all throughout your garage through vapor, and it gets on everything and will cause rust. So keep that in mind. If you're worried about that, store the bike away from a salty car. I think the longest I've ever owned a bike was about 20 years. And I ended up selling it, and I got half of what I paid for it 20 years later. Either I was a good salesman or it was more expensive than I thought it was. So I don't see any changes with the 2.0 as far as wear items. They're all the same pretty much. The only difference is you have a front fork. They typically, if you ride them normally and don't do any crazy stuff on them, won't cause you any issues. It doesn't require much maintenance. The only maintenance could ever be done is you could change the oil or change the springs. And I don't know that if you would be able to find a different spring for whether it's air or a mechanical spring. I don't think you could find a different one for the fork. Anyway, so the brakes, the only thing I ever have to worry about is pads, and it is a process. But when we get to the point that I need to put brakes on it, I'll go through the whole process with you guys and show you exactly how it's done. If your brakes are squealing, you need to adjust how your caliper is mounted on the bracket. It's probably just a matter of it's not straight and it's causing the squeal. Other than that, we're not seeing a significant difference in wear in these items that you would see, that a normal person, a normal 200, 150 pound person would see, but you're going to replace tires more often than somebody who's skinny. And that's the facts. It's just the facts. The other wear items occasionally will need to be replaced a little more often, but more often is not. It's probably increases maybe 10% from what a skinny person would have to replace their items with. So the bike is going to last you a long time. This XP and the Step Through are well built, fairly decent spec bikes. I don't see you needing to do maintenance on your bike very often. The tires every couple thousand miles if you get good ones. Brake pads every 7,000-8,000 miles if you get to that point. And the rest of the wear items, the seat posts and stuff like that, those things last forever. You probably want to change it because you want something different before you will wear one of those out. So the big question will be how long the motor lasts. And for the most part, those motors are, as long as you don't screw up the shell of the motor, you can just pull the guts out and replace them. Not worry about it. So, the wheels aren't that expensive anyway. Complete wheel for this bike. The only problem will be finding one that has the right plug on the end of it to match up to your controller. The wheels aren't that expensive, about $275 on the outside for a new wheel. If you taco this one or screw it up, I don't know if you'd get a bicycle shop willing to build you a new one. And if it is, it's going to be expensive. If they can find they can find the spokes, but the problem will be finding the rim. So I'm going to call it a video, 17 minutes long. So basically, to summarize, you're going to need to replace the tires a little more often, the brakes a little more often, and that's about the only wear items that you're really going to find other than the pedals. They were crappy pedals to start with. I don't think they make folding pedals that are real good quality. So I just went and bought some standard BMX ones that were a little wider and accommodated the fact that I have an ankle that turns the wrong direction, and they work well for me. My feet stay on them well. So the rest of this stuff, if you take care of the bike, and you don't have to baby it, just take care of it. It should last a long time. If you have any questions concerning 300-pound riders on bikes and what you can do to make the bike fit you better or any of that stuff, just submit a comment. I answer them as long as YouTube notifies me that there's a comment on a video. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. If you don't get an answer within a reasonable amount of time, submit it on a different video. I do look at all the comments and I do try to answer the ones that need answering. So have a great day. Get out there and ride that bike. Get it to use. Remember, even a 2-mile ride is better than no ride.